I really feel like for most of my life, I've definitely struggled because of my autistic brain. And then when I finally got diagnosed with autism and I realized why I struggled with all those things at age 23, it was like really easy to focus on all the challenging and I guess like negative aspects of my autistic experience because those things have been so prevalent in my life for so long. And then I finally got an explanation for them and I'm like, oh yeah, this is why. This explains everything. And then more recently, I'd say within maybe the past like 6 months or so, I've really been trying to just like be intentional with how I view myself as an autistic person and how I view like my challenges because of my autism. And I'm really trying to hold this like balance of yes, there are some really, really hard things, and there are some things that I would change, to be completely honest. Um, there are those moments, maybe where I'm just feeling like really overwhelmed or really overstimulated or really fatigued, where I would go as far as saying that, like, I hate being autistic, I hate having autism. And that's true in that moment. And the way that I feel about that is real and it's valid. And then there's also the other side of things where there's moments where I'm like, hmm, I'm not sure if I'd be able to experience this if I didn't have an autistic brain. And I'm really grateful I get to experience this thing. And it's hard because like I'm such a black and white thinker, and I recently made a video about all the ways that my brain is like so rigid and gets so stuck in certain things, and so it's hard for me to like fully grasp and understand this concept of holding these two seemingly opposing things in balance at the same time. Like having or being autistic is really really hard. Sometimes I hate it, and I also love my autistic brain. I love my autistic self, and I'm grateful for many of the things that are because of my autism. And in today's video, I want to kind of focus a little bit more on the positive. Before I go any further, again, I just want to reiterate, as I do in most of my videos, that this is my own experience with autism. Everyone on the autism spectrum is different. We all experience things differently. And this is just the list that I came up with for me based on my interests and the things that do bring me a lot of joy. And I'm sure some of these things um, happen, or a lot of non autistic people might feel these things. As well. And so just because you relate to some of these, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're also autistic. Um, Remember that, like, I don't know what it's like to not have an autistic brain. I was born with this brain, and I only know my own perspective through the lens of my autistic brain. But just based on like research I've done and um, just like observing different people and how they view the world, I've come to the conclusion that the things on this list have to do a lot actually with my autistic brain. So here are some of my favorite things about being autistic. The first is that I notice things that others don't. And this is kind of like that double-edged sword sort of thing where this also makes my anxiety a lot more heightened because I notice patterns, I notice things. I can not necessarily predict the future, but based on patterns, based on my observations, I can come to pretty good conclusions about what can come next based off of those patterns. Um, so that makes it hard because a lot of times when I feel anxious, it's like I have a reason to feel anxious because of my observations and because of the patterns that I've noticed. But then on the other side of things, it's like it's kind of cool just noticing details about things. It's kind of cool noticing patterns about things, and um, I've been told that I'm like really observant, and I find that to be actually a strength of mine. I think that it helps me see the world in a very intricate sort of way. Even like being in nature and noticing like the little tiny aspects of nature, the little tiny insects on the leaves, the patterns on the trees, um, little tiny pebbles and stones and crystals, um, just those sort of things. It makes life fun, and it makes life always a mystery and always a surprise, because there's always more than what meets the eye. I've also seen autism described as like a sort of like bottom up sort of thinking and processing. So like we view the world through a bunch of little tiny details that we try to put together, as opposed to viewing it from like a top down perspective of just automatically viewing everything from the bigger picture. I'm sure that might not resonate with some of you, but for me, I feel like that's definitely true in the way that I think and the way that I process things, which can also, again, make it a little bit difficult to come to conclusions sometimes, to view the bigger picture, because it's like I just view all the little tiny aspects of things, and it requires more brain power, more processing power to come to those bigger conclusions. The next thing on my list is that I think that I'm a very passionate person. I'm passionate about the things that I'm passionate about. In other words, like the things that I'm like really interested in, like it's an intense interest, an intense passion. For me, like that is the gym and fitness and exercise. I've loved this like since I was a kid. And it's nice having an outlet that like you feel so happy about. I'd say maybe like 95% of the time, like I'm stoked to go to the gym. I'm stoked to go exercise. And even the 5% of the times where I might be a little more tired that day or might not really have the motivation, like I'm still really excited for it. Some other things that I'm really passionate about, I love weather. Anytime there's like a thunderstorm, I always get on my phone and I track the radar and I see where it's going, and I see like where all the lightning is hitting, or like if there's like a wildfire that has to do with weather too. I like to track that. I like to see what the wind's doing in the area. I like to see what the terrain is like, how it's going to burn. So fitness, weather, and then music. That's my other special interest. I've always loved music. When when I was a kid, I would lay out. I have this like really vivid memory of me laying outside listening to the radio. I had my binder that I would write down every song that came on the radio, and I'd do that for hours, and then I'd go inside and download each of those songs, and then I would use that music to pretend that I had my own radio station. I had like a mixer, I had my computer, I had my iPad, I had a microphone, I had everything hooked up. I even had like a fake radio station banner on my wall. And I even bought like, on the radio stations in between songs, they have those little like IDs of what the radio station name is. I even bought some of those from my own fake radio station and had those made. So when I say that I'm passionate, it's like, it goes like a step above. This also goes for like ethical things, and if I see something that's unethical or that goes against my own morals, I feel really, really strongly about those things as well. Which I think the good side of that is I feel like it makes me an empathetic person. It makes me stand for what I believe in, but then also sometimes I have to like force myself to take a step back. Maybe it's from like taking a step back from like viewing the news about that thing or researching more on that thing, because it gets to a point where it starts to like anger me and really upset me when there is something unethical going on. Time for a sip of matcha. Lots of talking. Okay. The next thing on my list is I feel like my autism makes me real. And by that, I mean, like, I have a hard time pretending to be someone that I'm not. I have a hard time faking things or telling white lies. I feel like it makes me just be me without feeling the need to put on like a different version of myself for different types of people, or um, to try to pretend I'm interested in things that I'm not. I can't pretend if I'm not interested in it. Um, and I think that that's also a strength of mine as well. The next thing on my list is hyperfocus, and this is one of those things that has both the good and the bad. The bad part about it is sometimes I forget to eat, forget I have to go to the bathroom. It can suck me in. An example of like when I get really hyper focused is when I edit videos, like when I'm like editing videos for brands, or when I have like different projects that I'm working on. Like I can just go, and then I'm like, it's already 7 p.m. Oh my gosh, I have to go to the bathroom. I forgot to eat. I need to get some water. But the good in that too is it also, I find it helps me be more productive. It makes it easier to get these things done that I am really interested in and that I do really enjoy and really love doing, like video editing, for example. That's one of those where lately I seem to get really drawn in and hyper focused on that. The next thing on my list is my connection to nature and animals and just like the natural world. I don't know if this is like autism specific or if it's just like because like I'm really interested in weather and nature, but I feel such a deep connection to nature, and when I'm in nature is when I truly do feel the most at peace. Um, I often get like just like taken back and blown away by just the beauty of nature, the vastness of nature, both the peacefulness and stillness, but then also um, the power and magnitude of nature. It's something that like it's hard to explain. Like I feel it in my body, um, and I think because nature is so intricate and so detailed, this kind of goes back to the first thing that I mentioned is like noticing the things that others don't. I think that I just like I don't even know how to put this into words. I think it's just like nature just draws me in. And there's so many different like sensory aspects of nature, which sometimes it can be a lot if I'm already feeling overstimulated. But then other times, like just sitting on a rock and watching the creek go by, listening to the sounds of the water, listening to the birds, watching the way the sun is swaying through the tree leaves. I just I love it, and it brings me a lot of peace. And then also like with animals, like I feel like I connect with animals better than I can connect with other humans a lot of the times. There's nothing that needs to be spoken. It's more just like a felt sense of presence. And yeah. The next thing on my list is music. I already mentioned that music is a special interest of mine. I think part of the reason why I love music so much is because it soothes my chaotic and just like uncomfortable mind. Um, and on top of that, I also have synesthesia. So the way I experience music, and from my understanding, it's like synesthesia is when like our senses kind of overlap. For me, this shows up in like days of the week. Like each day has a color associated with it in my mind. Same with the months, same with numbers. But with music, it's like I hear the music with my ears, right? But then like I can see it with my mind's eye and I can feel it in my body, if that makes sense. And this makes listening to music such an incredible, soothing experience, and one that really helps me regulate and just like get in tune with my body and just kind of like soothe everything. And the last thing on my list about my favorite things about being autistic is that it makes me different. It makes me me. Of course, like in my younger years, I had always wished that I wasn't so different, and I didn't know that it was autism. But I would just like observe the people around me and always feel like an outcast and always feel like an outsider. Um, and since being on this like journey of accepting my autism and going to therapy, learning more about myself, I'm starting to realize that like I would be a completely different, and I'd even go as far as saying much more boring person if I wasn't autistic, if I didn't have my autistic brain. There's too much of the same out there. Everyone's trying to follow all these societal norms and societal standards, and that gets boring after a while. And I'm finding that there's so much beauty in each of our different unique traits and qualities and things that make us us. And this isn't just specific to autism, but I think for me, my autism makes me like even more different than the norm. But this goes for everyone, whether you're autistic or not. You've got to have something unique about you. Of course you do. You're your own unique person. And try to embrace that a little more. The world would be so boring if everything was always the same, if everything just followed the same patterns. There's beauty in being yourself, and I'm learning about that every single day.